Katagiri Roshi and his teachings. And the participants will be 3 long-term students of his. So a little bit about these 3 teachers. Rev Joen O'Neal and the Rev Gempo Michael O'Neal are guiding teachers of the Compassionate Ocean Dharma Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They practiced for many years with Dainin Katagiri Roshi at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center and Hakyoji Zen Monastery. They've also practiced with Thich Nhat Hanh in France and the US and completed training for professionals with John Kabat-Zinn. The Rev Joen O'Neal was ordained a Zen priest by Dainin Katagiri in 1980, and she received Dharma transmission from him in 1989. The Rev Gempo Michael O'Neal was ordained a Zen priest by Rev Shoken Winecoff in 2008. The third participant, Rev Teijo Munnich, was a disciple and Dharma heir of Dainin Katagiri Roshi. She studied with him from 1975 until his death in 1990. Rev Munnich was ordained a Zen priest in 1981, and in 1983, she began to envision a residential practice center and community with, at its heart, Zen residential practice for women. This came to be Great Tree Zen Women's Temple. It was incorporated in 2004. And after an exacting search, a suitable location was found in Alexander, North Carolina, and Great Tree opened her doors in 2005. In addition to developing Great Tree, Reverend Munnich is Dharma teacher for the Zen Center of Asheville, along with the Charlotte Zen Meditation Society in Charlotte, North Carolina. So this morning, we'll be hearing from these 3 Zen teachers as they tell us about their teacher. So Trey, I think you need to say a few things now, maybe?
Yes, thanks, Ann. Good morning. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this conversation is being recorded. The speakers are pinned though, so you won't be on the recording, but we recorded and then posted on the Great Tree Zen Women's Temple YouTube site, which can be found by searching Great Tree Zen Women's Temple on YouTube, and perhaps elsewhere. I'm not sure if Compassionate Ocean Zen Center will be posting it as well. The Q&A at the end will also be recorded. So at that time, you're invited to unmute yourself and ask a question. It will be just more of a traditional question and answer style format rather than a discussion, just in the interest of time. And then I want to remind everybody about the practice of dana, and I'll just read a brief statement about that. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings, one moment here, and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, such as Great Tree Zen Women's Temple and Compassionate Ocean Zen Center, and to give without judgment of expectation when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. You can either do this directly or through Great Tree, and we will pass it on to them. And so in the chat, there's Great Tree Zen Women's Temple donation site posted, as well as Compassionate Ocean Zen Center posted as well. And at the end of the conversation and Q&A, I'll remind everybody and repost it in the chat in case it's gotten lost and also share the mailing addresses if you prefer to practice by sending in a donation. Thank you, and I think next is Reverend Rendo.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here to what feels very much like a little Dharma family reunion. So just to kind of set the stage for this great opportunity to hear from, first we'll hear from Joen-san, then Gempo-san, and then Teijo-san in that order, to talk about their experience being students of Katagiri Roshi from the early 70s, in Joen-san's case since 1972, and Teijo since 75, and Gempo-san's case since 78, to have that time with Katagiri Roshi. And I was thinking about this, introducing this, and just in some context for me, it just makes me think about the relationship I had with my grandfather, how much I adored my grandfather and wanted to hang on his every word, and how close I was to him, and how much I wanted to have my hand in his, and so on. And, you know, I had my grandfather died, it'll be 20 years this year. So I haven't seen him physically in 20 years, but I feel he's very much here. And in the case of Katagiri Roshi, it's 30 years. And I thought, wow, what would it be like if I had never met my grandfather and I was just dependent on my mother's stories to hear about my grandfather and get to know him that way. And in our Dharma family, for so many of us, it's like that. We're hearing about it through another Dharma parent, not through the Dharma grandparent. But in one way or another, we're all here because of Katagiri Roshi's vow so long ago. And that vow lives on and takes new paths in this stream. And I feel very honored to welcome everybody to this space and to really feel that Katagiri Roshi's presence is very much alive in here, in everyone. And in that spirit, I'm just going to turn it over to Joen-san to begin, and just whatever comes up for you about your experience, please, we're all ears.
Okay, can you hear me? Well, I find this very exciting. A little too exciting, but I'll struggle through with all this excitement. And I see Linda and Stephen, I haven't seen them in 20 years or so. And it's nice to have Andrea here and Mary Browning. I'm not doing everyone. Okay, Michael and I always have a little Dharma tiff at the beginning of the talk. So, okay, so let's see. Here's a story about Katagiri Roshi. I used to go to see Katagiri Roshi because I was suffering a lot. So I would go and complain and whine and carry on a bit. And then Katagiri Roshi would laugh, really laugh, a big roaring, rolling laugh. And I was always a little taken aback. But then I would start to laugh too. And I saw, you know, what he was doing then was just making me see how ridiculous I was. And what a big fuss I was making over nothing really. So as I was sitting there, going on, and he would just smile and smile and then start laughing and laughing. And anyway, I've been thinking about that in the last couple of days, and that's been making me smile a lot. So that's a little story. And then I have a list of sayings from Katagiri Roshi that I put together. So I just like to read this list. The first one is accept everything that exists as the contents of your life. The next one, don't try to control everything. The universe will take care. And that was a very pointed remark to me, who always tried to control everything. Non-suffering is strength of character. Non-suffering is strength of character. Settle the self on the self. I'm sure those of you that know Katagiri Roshi by book or teacher know that very well. Spiritual security means you are fully alive and comfortable in your life as it is, without expecting anything. Don't be tossed away. That was a big one. Because we were young then, and we were always being tossed away. The drop of a hat, we would get tossed away. So he had to say that a lot. Don't be tossed away. Oh. You need to see things from long range. And that was very important because we were young and we didn't see anything from long range. We couldn't imagine anything being more than 30. No. So he would tell us over and over, you have to see things from long range, long range. And then, of course, his favorite, just take one step. Just take one step. Live in the vast expanse of the ocean. Turn the results of causation into eternal possibility. That's an Andrea's edited book. Turn the results of causation into eternal possibility. Just keep it warm in your heart. That's a really important one. Just keep it warm in your heart. Have wholehearted devotion, moment after moment. You have to suffer to find a way. People don't like that one. I didn't like that one when he would say that to me. Well, you have to suffer to find a way. No. Anyway, that's true. That's an important point. Come back to your original intention. And that teaching really has helped me through the years. Come back to your original intention. And I was in a monastery in England and I got into some trouble. And I called Katagiri Roshi and he was at Hokyoji. And I'm going on and he just said, Joan, come back to your original intention. That was really helpful. Just light a candle around you. And that's in Andrea's edited book. Very helpful. And then he used to use the expression, turn over a new leaf. And that was always a big relief to me when he would say that. Just turn over a new leaf and begin again. You know? He says, don't cheat yourself. Don't justify yourself. I'm going to say that one again. Don't justify yourself, because that's something that still, we all do that. Continuous practice of living in vow. Roshi always came back to talking about continuous practice. Continuous practice. You are really Buddha. And that's an important one. That's what he said to me when I first met him. He looked at me and he said, what did he say, Michael?
Kind of deep.
Kind of deep, yes. He said kind of deep. And then he said kind of neurotic. And then he said, but still, you are really Buddha. So I say to all of you, you are really Buddha, but still, you are really Buddha. And then I remember the big laugh that I told you about. That big laugh stays with me during times of need, which, you know, at least once a day, a big laugh, and also a tear. When I left Minnesota Zen Center and went to study in a monastery for a year, my daughter was in the back of the car and she was turning around and waving at Katagiri Roshi and Tomoe. And then she said, Mom, Katagiri Roshi is crying. And then I burst into tears. And the last thing I have on my list is just put your hand on their shoulder. You know, when you're having a difficult time with someone, just put your hand on their shoulder. And that's come in handy quite a bit. Okay, those are my few remarks. Now, whose turn is it?
So now, Joanne-san, thank you so much. It's just so refreshing. As you're talking, we can again be bathed in that laughter and those depth of tears. You really feel it. Thank you so much. I know everyone feels the same. It's so nice to take this in. And now, Gempo-san, if you'll be so kind, when as you're ready.
Okay, well, first of all, it's a delight to be here. Last fall, Teijo-san called us up and proposed this kind of get-together. And it's great. It's wonderful. And as I was sitting here, I was thinking I wanted to express gratitude for all the beings whose life effort made it possible for us to gather together like this. All the Zoom engineers and the computer technicians and the people who assembled things in China or wherever, and just all, and the power, anyway, just the innumerable beings who have contributed basically anonymously to make this possible. So I thank you all for that, because now we can be together like this in this very difficult time. These are amazing times we're in, with the pandemic, with an assault on the Capitol, with the outgoing president and incoming president, and many other things too, economic problems, etc. So I really hope that all of you are staying healthy. You've been healthy, and I wish that you will continue to be healthy. And just very briefly, I'll just mention there are several people here. This is intended this morning to be a conversation among Teijo, Joan, and me. but there are several other people here who had longtime experience with Katagiri Roshi, like Andrea Martin, Jan Fryer, Linda Zoliak,
And Steve.
Steve, and I think Marie Feldmeyer knew Katagiri Roshi. Anyway, and there may be other people. I'm only seeing part of the screen here, but there's many people. Now, in anticipation, well, okay, so one more thing before we get to Katagiri Roshi. It's great to sort of be part of Great Tree Zen Temple for this morning. And I just want to say two things. One is, you're very fortunate to have Teijo-san as a teacher. And that's completely beyond whether she's perfectly delightful all the time. That's not the point. That's not the point. But Teijo-san is someone who is deeply dedicated to the Dharma. And her radar is attuned to the Dharma way. And so she's living that out. You know, she's dedicated her life to that, and that's what she's living out. And that's a great gift for you to have such a teacher. And you know, Chimyo-san is the same, but right now I'm talking about Teijo-san. The other thing is that it's not easy to have a Zen Center, and you have a building, you have a, you know, that's a big deal. That's a big accomplishment. And so I thank you to everyone who's been part of Great Tree, and I encourage you to continue to help Great Tree become stronger and to continue indefinitely in the future. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's a worthwhile thing to do. Okay. Okay, now a little bit about Katagiri Roshi. When I was thinking about this, the idea was that we would kind of remember Katagiri Roshi, kind of reminisce about him. And part of the idea is that most of you didn't have direct experience with Katagiri Roshi. You've heard about him sort of secondhand through his books and maybe through what teachers have said or remembrances, etc. But actually, over time, Katagiri Roshi's presence, I think, will kind of seep into you. So if you've come expecting sort of a special shortcut to really get to know Roshi, Katagiri Roshi, because of something I say or John says, please let go of that expectation. Because if you get a quick, vivid idea, it's almost certainly going to be wrong. Because Katagiri Roshi doesn't get, nobody, but Katagiri Roshi does not get boiled down to one little neat essence, etc. But I will say a little bit about Katagiri Roshi. One time I was somehow, for some reason it came to me, if I could have access, if Katagiri Roshi could come back for a minute or so, what would I want to do with him? What kind of contact would I want to have with him? And what I really thought was, I mean, it's kind of like, okay, so please, I had to give an answer to myself right then. And the answer I gave is, I'd like to watch him bow. I'd like to watch him. I'd like to be present with him when he did a full bow or 3 full bows. Now, I don't know how sensible that is to you, but Katagiri Roshi's practice was a fully embodied practice. He lived fully embodied. And this is an important lesson for us all, because it's very easy for us to not be fully embodied. But basically, my sense was with Katagiri Roshi is that he sort of took care of his body presence, his body comportment, his posture, not in a kind of precious artificial way, but just in an embodied way. And when he would do his full bows, which of course are not really kind of normal part of Western culture, but when he would do his full prostrations, there was a presence to that. There was an expression of wholeheartedness and Dharma and nothing extra. That's what came to mind when I thought, that's what I would like. If I had just a brief time to be present with him again, I would be very happy if I could be with him like that. And then this morning when I was thinking about saying that little story, I said, one more thing I'd like to just look him in the eyes for a minute. I'd just like to look at him and have him look at me. That would be very nice. I'd be very happy with that. Now here's a story about Katagiri Roshi. It's actually about Teijo-san. And I'm not sure that this is accurate. You know, this is the way these oral stories go. So we have Teijo-san here so she can correct it. But I must have heard it originally from her, because there's no other way I would have heard it, as you'll hear. So anyway, this is the story as I remember it. One time, so every Thursday evening at the Minnesota Zen Center, we would give
Beginner instruction.
basic instruction and sitting practice and a kind of mini orientation to the center. It took about 45 minutes or so. And one time, one of Katagiri Roshi's priests was giving the instruction, not Teijo, not Joen, etc. And I wasn't a priest at that time. By the way, I was ordained in 2018, not 2008 or whenever. But anyway, and it happened that Teijo was in the area, was in the periphery, and she heard this person, this peer of hers, giving Zazen instruction. And she went up to Katagiri Roshi and she said something to this effect. Roshi, I just heard, Hojo-san, I just heard so-and-so giving Zazen instruction. And they said Zazen was such and such. And I always thought, from my understanding of what you've said, is that Zazen was so-and-so. You know, she filled in the details. And so which is it? Who's right? Now, this is an interesting setup right here. You know, this is an interesting question for Katagiri Roshi to have brought to him. And so here's what he said, according to my remembrance of being told this story. He said, no one knows what Zazen is. No one knows what Zazen is. This is a kind of a brilliant answer that took the whole controversy to a different level. And it also skillfully avoided picking and choosing between who was more right or less right. And basically what he did is he kept what Zazen is wonderfully open. And I think really that's a hallmark of Zen practice and Zazen practice, is that Zazen practice doesn't reduce itself down to a kind of a neat formula, a kind of, okay, this is what you do and you just crank it out and that's Zazen. In a sense, Zazen practice, when we sit down, is always a mystery. We're always wondering, we're always discovering how to do Zazen, what it means to do Zazen, what it means to be Zazening. And the point is not to, it's not like we're brooding about it in order to come up with a more elegant verbal answer. We're always open to it as something, when we sit down, when we show up, it's always fresh and alive, okay? So that's a story about Katagiri Roshi and also about Teijo-san. I'll say one more thing. One more thing briefly. Another story about Teijo-san. Probably those of you who know, this is mostly about Teijo-san. It's only incidentally about Katagiri Roshi. Probably those of you who practice with Teijo-san, I'm guessing she hasn't changed much, but this was like 30, 40 years ago. When Teijo-san would eat something, when she was finished eating with that bowl, you could pretty much put it right back in the cupboard. It would be that clean. She wouldn't leave food in the bowl. And also, we would have lunch every Saturday. We'd have a work period and we'd have lunch. And sometimes there'd be little tiny dribs and drabs of food left over. And the Tenzo would have a tendency, you know, nobody was going to be eating it for a week or whatever. And basically the Tenzo would tend to have, in my remembrance, a sense that, well, this isn't worth saving. And I remember Teijo would always take any extra food, even the tiniest amount of food, she'd always take it home. And my sense is that basically Teijo was getting to the point where she could pretty much eat on the vapors in the air, because she was so mindful of nutriments that were in the environment. She wouldn't waste anything. Anyway, so she got very, 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 very skilled at that just by taking that as a practice, sort of the non-waste, the respect of food. Well, then one time at the end of a talk, Katagiri Roshi would typically invite questions. And Teijo-san said something to this effect. She said, she talked about how she had, you know, been practicing not wasting food and, you know, valuing food and not wanting to take it away and not wanting to lose it, to waste it. And then she said, but now I've noticed that I've become more critical of other people. Now, I don't remember what Katagiri Roshi said in response to that question. But what I remember feeling was being very moved that I was hearing a sincere practitioner telling about their path. That she had taken on a wonderful practice called respecting food, and she'd sort of refined that practice into something exceptionally skilled. But then she noticed that there was something sneaking in along with it, which was a kind of a pride or a kind of judgmentalism that in a sense was bringing in something not so wholesome along with something that was wholesome. And she was asking Katagiri Roshi about that. So that's Teijo-san. That's a sincere practitioner. And I hope these two stories are reasonably accurate, but they're good stories anyway. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gempo-san, for sharing those stories. And before we turn it over to Teijo-san, first, I just want to say that it goes both ways, and you're talking about Great Tree, and we're all so glad to hear it and have you here. Same for Compassionate Ocean Temple. We're so grateful to see those photographs last night, see that beautiful space. Hopefully one day I can be there and others can be there when we get to the other side of where we're at. So thank you both for your space. And so much for your stories. You know, it's so nice. You know, we talk about, as I said at the beginning, sometimes hearing stories about your grandfather, and it's very nice to hear from your aunts and uncles also about your grandfather, not just from your parent. So you get another perspective, and it's so nice. And finally, before we turn over to Teijo, just to say your beginning story just touched my heart so much, and I know everyone else's, about the prostrations and this embodied practice, of course, because that's my exact same thing. When I started practicing Zen and first time I came into a Zendo and saw Teijo do prostrations, I realized this is my practice, because you can't communicate it. You feel it. So I thank you so much. And Teijo, thank you so much for arranging this and being who you are, and the floor is yours.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. That's Compassionate Ocean. And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And that was, that is the practice place of Gempo, Joen and Gempo, which my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my understanding is that it was a little building in North Minneapolis, or in Northeast Minneapolis, that got gutted. And is it still screen sharing?
No.
It's still, just a second. It got gutted and rebuilt as a meditation space. Most of which I think was visioned and the work done by Gempo. And it is a piece of art. How long did it take? About 15 years or something? If you see there.
Just 12.
Oh, just 12.
Just 12.
We visited in Minneapolis, some of us from Great Tree, and it was still a work in progress at the time. But the last time that I visited, it was finished and it is absolutely beautiful. So when you go to Minneapolis, everyone, I think this is a place you want to visit, definitely. And I want to apologize for not wearing my robes. I'm taking some time off and I got stuck in Hot Springs last night because it snowed, and I do not drive on mountain roads when they're slippery. Even though I'm from Minnesota, I'm smart enough to not drive on mountain roads when they're slippery. So all my robes and everything are at home, are back at the temple. I think this is a very timely time to have this discussion because it would be Katagiri Roshi's 92nd birthday in a few days, the 19th of January. And so, or 93rd birthday. He died in 1990 at the age of 62. And I just want to say a few things about Joen-san and Gempo-san. I'm not used to calling him Gempo, so you might find me calling him Michael. Joen-san was at the Minnesota Zen Center, as you heard at the beginning from Rendo, a few years before I arrived. She was there from about 1973, I think, or 72. And I met Katagiri Roshi in 1975, so started there a few years after that. And Gempo-san was there a few years later. But I probably, because of Joen-san, I am ordained. Because she was after Katagiri Roshi for a long time to ordain her. And I kind of got swept into that. So thank you for that very much. I appreciate that very much, Joen-san. It focused me a little bit. And what impressed me most all those years about Joen-san was that she was juggling her Zen practice with raising children and being married. And I really felt that, and I look back at it and I think, what an impossible task, because it's not like she wasn't around Zen Center much, because she was. And she did sessions and she did practice periods. And as she told you, she went to England, not just to a monastery, to a Theravadan monastery. What I remember is a picture of her with her eyebrows shaved. And a letter we got that they couldn't eat anything after noon or after 1 o'clock or something like that, which just totally shocked me. But they could eat chocolate, which also shocked me. But of course, I tried that one time, and you can't eat too much chocolate after afternoon without getting a headache. So also she was present as a caregiver at the time of Katagiri Roshi's death. And particularly the last week, I was thinking about the night of his, or the week or so before he died, when he was in home hospice. And Joen-san and I were sleeping next to each other on the living room floor at the Zen Center. I don't know if you remember that, Joe and Son. There were about 10 people that just moved in to the Katagiri's apartment. Michael, I think you were there too, right, Gempo-san? Yeah, and oh yes, yes, and I have a story to tell about that too. But and we, you know, we got up 3 times during the night and during the day. There were 5 of us that had to turn him, and Dokai-san was there. Dokai is head of practice at Hokkyoji now, and he was practicing as a oncology nurse at the time, so he was the perfect person to guide us through those turnings, because Katagiri Roshi had a lot of pain in his bones because the cancer had gotten into his bones at that point. And so Michael Gempo-san practiced with Katagiri Roshi as a layperson for many years. And you know, in Dogen Zenji's tradition, lay and priest practice is not different. So Gempo-san practiced in exactly the same way we did all those years, but didn't choose ordination. But also, as I mentioned, was a key caregiver for Katagiri Roshi during his extended illness. And then after Katagiri Roshi's death, Joen-san and Gempo-san founded Compassionate Ocean Zen Center. And I might mention that the name Compassionate Ocean is Katagiri Roshi's way name. When you're ordained, you receive a way name and a Dharma name. My Dharma name is Teijo. My way name is Daiju, which means great tree. And Katagiri Roshi's way name was Compassionate Ocean. His Dharma name was Great Patience. So they took the Compassionate Ocean part of his name. So it's been 30 years since Katagiri Roshi died. And Gempo-san asked me to, he said that a lot of people that were coming from their group didn't know me. So to say a few things about me, about myself. And so I thought I'd mention a few things, a few stories. One was how I met Katagiri Roshi. I was on a quest to find a teacher. It's kind of a long story, so I'm just going to abbreviate it. And I, of course, thought I could never meet a great teacher in Minnesota, where I was born and raised. So I left Minnesota, got on a bus, and I had a ticket to go anywhere I wanted in the United States. I could change the ticket whenever I wanted. First, I went to Colorado and visited some of my convent friends. Then I went out to San Diego and visited my sister, and I ended up in San Francisco, and I was broke. And I ended up there in the middle of the night and found a place to stay that night. And then I wandered around San Francisco the next day and ended up at the San Francisco Zen Center. And was very taken with the energy there. And so I the person in the office said, well, can I help you? And I said, well, I'd like to stay, but I don't have any money. And she said, well, why don't you get a job? And I said, well, maybe I will. And she said, well, what can you do? I said, well, I can teach and I can type. So anyway, long story short, she got me a temporary job at a place where her sister worked. And then I moved into a place about a block away from Zen Center. Now, I didn't really want to practice Zen. I thought it was too hard. But a few days after I got there, Katagiri Roshi arrived on a visit from Minnesota. And so I still wasn't terribly interested in practicing Zen, but everybody in my flat was going to hear him speak at Green Gulch, which is part of the San Francisco Zen Center. So I jumped in the back of the van, you know, it was the hippie days, it was 1975, and went out to Green Gulch and ended up out of Green Gulch, and their Zendo at that time was in a barn. And I got kind of shoved up to the front because I was one of the first people there. And I sat down and listened to him. I couldn't leave because the place was packed and there was no way to escape. But the thing that impressed me about him, and I don't know how much of this is my projection based on my crazy life at that time and how much is actually the truth, but my perception when I listened to him, and most of it I really couldn't understand because his English was so hard to understand, was that he would say something really brilliant and he would pause and I would think, oh, that was brilliant. And then he would continue. And then he would say something that I perceived as being kind of stupid and he would pause and he would just continue. And I thought, this is what I want to do in my life. No matter what happens, I want to just continue. And as Joen-san said, he used to say, don't be tossed away. And that reminded me of something that he used to say also. He said, no matter what happens, just stand up there. And that's what he always did. He always stood up there and came back to his original intention, which at one time he defined to me as, that's what vow is, to return to your original intention. The other story that I want to tell, and it's very related, and this has got Michael in it, and Michael, I hope you don't mind me telling this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Sorry. As I said, Katagiri Roshi, Gempo-san was very present, especially during the last few months of Katagiri Roshi's illness. And I don't remember exactly how long this happened, but for a while, Tomoe-san had picked 7 guys to come to their apartment, one each night for 7 days during the week to help her at night and to stay there because it got to the point where I was staying there for a while, but I moved out when the guys moved in because Katagiri Roshi needed help even getting to the bathroom. He had trouble and it was just too much of a struggle for Tomoe-san and I to do that. And I think, Michael, you were one of them, right? Yeah, so he was coming once a week. And then as it got closer, the last time Roshi was in the hospital, we decided to take him home and set up a hospice at home. And so Tomoe-san selected a few people that she really felt were reliable to sit with Roshi so that he would always have someone sitting at his bedside all the time. And of course, Gempo-san was one of them. And I was the one that was in charge of scheduling people to sit with Roshi. And one of the things that I noticed is that, Gempo-san is a very reliable guy. If you ask him to do something, he will follow through and he will do it. And so I frequently put him on the night shift or the early morning shift because I knew that he'd stay awake. He'd find a way to stay awake and really be present there. And so, but one day I came to him and I said, okay, tomorrow I'd like you to sit with Roshi. I think I said from like midnight to 6 o'clock. And he just looked at me and said, oh, Teijo, I just can't do that. It's just too much. That's just too long. And he said, could you get somebody else to do it? Well, I was just determined that he was going to do it because he was the guy that I trusted the most to stay awake. And so I said, well, maybe could you just do it for a shorter period of time? So he said, okay. So I put him on the shift, I think from 12 to 3 or 12 to 4 or something like that. That night I went to bed and I just remember my sheer exhaustion. I laid down. Actually, I think it was after we turned Roshi at 2 o'clock in the morning because I was in charge of waking everybody up to go and turn Roshi. And I remember when we turned Roshi that time, I was feeling his feet were very cold. I was on his feet and I was trying to warm up his feet. And I went back to bed and as I got into bed, I thought, when is this going to end? Because I was so exhausted. And I think everybody was really exhausted. And I thought, no, I don't want to think when is this going to end, because I didn't want Roshi to die. So then I went to sleep. And about an hour later, Gempo-san comes and wakes me up. And Roshi had drawn his last breath. And then we chanted the Nirvana Sutra for Roshi. We all stood around his bed and we bathed his body, one person at a time. And And then we put him in his coffin and took him downstairs and sat with him for 3 days. But I remember talking to Gempo-san about this afterwards, and he said the reason that he didn't want to have that, sitting time with Roshi was because that he knew that Roshi would die during that quiet time at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he had sat with him enough to know that. But the thing that really inspired me about that was that even though he knew that, and even though he felt that resistance, he still did it. And that was really the kind of spirit that I felt that Katagiri Roshi conveyed to us, and that Gempo-san has within him, and also Joen-san, that determination, that kind of staying with the practice no matter what happens, just stand up there. And I really respect that. And I think that this was a lot of what Katagiri Roshi's teachings were. One of the things that most affected me during those days when I was helping to do caregiving for Katagiri Roshi was that he, whenever something would come up, that a new pain or his knowledge that he was in fact dying, or anything that seemed to scare him, you could see the fear, and then he would close his eyes for almost exactly 40 minutes. You could almost time it. And then it would be like he was doing Zazen. And I thought, I want to do Zazen for the rest of my life so that it will help me to die. So that was a great inspiration for me. I think that's all I really want to share. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I thought maybe if other people have some questions or something that we could address those, we could each address them in our own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Teijo-san.
So we'll open for questions now, and just thank you, Teijo-san, thank you, Joanne-san, thank you, Gempo-san, for sharing your heart and really sharing these stories of great intimacy and love and care and connection that can really fill us even in our separate spaces. Here comes my dog. Separate places. It really warms the heart and feels good and helps you to just keep standing up there. So if everyone doesn't get a chance to ask a question or talk on behalf of everybody, just deep thank you for sharing with us. And now just to open it up for anybody to have a question or comment.
I just want to offer a remembrance that is not Dharma related, directly, but it is that the Katagiri and Tomoe's generosity, and Teijo and I were housemates for a while, and we would occasionally be invited to the Katagiris for dinner, and Roshi would start, bring out the sake, and he would start pouring the sake until we were all very drunk. And it was very permissive. I mean, it was sort of, like it was Katagiri, but I have a lot of fond memories about that. But the other thing is, I want to say that what I felt that he did is he affirmed our selfhood, not in an egotistical way, but just in a quiet way, in the way that we swim in the big ocean while we are being true to our deep selves, our individual selves. And I think that was very affirming to all of us, certainly to me, that it was okay to be who we are. In fact, that was our responsibility to ourselves to be who we are, but also in the big ocean, you know, with the awareness of all these other sentient beings around us.
Thank you, Mary. I want to mention before we end, and we can go over past 11 o'clock, and if some of you have to leave, that's just fine. But I want to mention that Andrea, who has edited 2 of Katagiri Roshi's books, the latest of which is truly his voice, in my opinion. She will be speaking about this in February on three Saturdays. So this is a great opportunity. I know that she has really done a lot of work around this kind of editing and studied a lot of Katagiri Roshi's talks in order to do this. So it's a great opportunity. So please check our website. And I also want to remind everyone, and Genjo-san will put this up again, hopefully on a screen share, that to offer some dana to Compassionate Ocean for Joen-san and Gempo-san's to help support the temple. It was no easy task to build that temple. And I'm sure that there's a fair amount of debt involved in that. And also they need support. So please go to their website and make a donation to help support that. That's a great practice in this tradition.
Thank you so much for the lead in. I'm really looking forward to becoming more familiar with this Sangha and talking with you in February. I wanted to just say one thing about Genpo while he's here and his relationship to the books, because during Katagiri Roshi's final days, Genpo, in his capacity as president of the board, he had a long interview with Katagiri Roshi about essentially his final wishes. And one of the questions that he asked him was, would it be all right to publish his teachings posthumously, and could they be edited? And Katagiri affirmed, yes, he could be edited. A lot, essentially, was what I took away from that question. And that gave me permission to take, to give it a shot, you know, to see how I could essentially take what he had said and turn it into a book that could be read now by us in the world we live in now. So that's a connection that I wanted to just bring forward while Genpo was here, and to appreciate that he asked that question when there was an opportunity to ask it.
I got a real sense of Katagiri Roshi. Through this meeting today, how people spoke about him. And I think it sounds like you couldn't understand him, but that's really understanding him. I had no idea I'm thankful. I have a lot of gratitude that I found the Sangha. And and people to practice with.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And that's a good reminder. Actually, right at the heart of Zen practice is gratitude. Really going deep. Gratitude for other people you practice with, gratitude for teachers, gratitude for deceased teachers, gratitude for the cushion you have to sit on. It just permeates with gratitude. That's our practice. That's our practice. And of course, it's not just limited to the Zen aspect. We experience gratitude in our practice, and then we appreciate our kitchen and our sidewalk and all that. Anyway, I'd just like to make one quick announcement. We're studying Katagiri Roshi's 4th book, which was edited by Andrea Martin. We've been doing this for 3 quarters, and we're going to begin again. We're going to continue starting this coming Wednesday with our winter Buddhist studies course, Wednesday evenings from 7 to 9. You can go to our website and get the details, and then just, sign up. There is a fee, but if the fee is a problem, just figure out what works for you. Okay. And I'll be giving the Sunday talk next week, and I'll talk a little bit more my situation. There's not a lot of news, but this is the first time I've been to our Sangha since the end of November, because of I fell and injured myself, and I'm pretty much better. But anyway, I'll be giving the Sunday talk next week, as well as the Buddhist Studies talk this Wednesday. And then Joen is going to be leading the Introduction to Mindfulness, the MBSR course, and that's postponed 1 week. So it's going to start a week from Tuesday, a week from this coming Tuesday. And the correct information is on our website about that too. Okay, thank you.
It's 12:02 now, and I reposted the place where the website with the place where you can make a donation to Compassionate Ocean in the chat. And Trey, do you have that in a form where you could screen share it? There it is.
Yeah, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can take a screenshot and have it, or you can cut and paste it out of the chat.
Very good.
So Joen and Gempo, I don't want to keep you if you can't stay, but I will stay. And if you can stay, that's nice. And if anybody else wants to stay, I'm happy to entertain any more questions as well.
We can stay as long as there are questions.
If I may, I'll ask a question. Teijo-san, you said that after an experience with Katagiri Roshi, that you just wanted to do Zazen for the rest of my life so that it will help me to die. So can you reflect on the success of that aspiration that you expressed?
I guess we won't know for sure until it's time for me to die. But I recognized when I was in the monastery in Japan, everybody was, well, not everybody, but a lot of the monks, particularly the German monks, were going out to the graveyard for sitting at night. And and one of them particularly used to tell me, oh, Teijo, you should do this. You should really do this. This is such a great experience. You should go out to the graveyard. So a couple times I tried it. I had all my cushions, and it was during sesshin, and it was the middle of the night. And I got to the bottom of the steps, and I just couldn't go into the graveyard. And by the 3rd time, I kind of said, okay, I get it. I'm afraid of death. I'll deal with this later. And then when I came home from Japan, very shortly, Katagiri Roshi began to get sick at the very next practice period. And then within the next 6 months, he was diagnosed with cancer. And then, you know, he lived for another year after that. But it kind of put me face to face with death. And I thought, well, this is my opportunity. But what I really saw, and I kind of recognized this from the very beginning of my Zazen practice, is that he could deal with things through Zazen, and he could deal with them in a very short period of time. Facing death can't be an easy thing, and for anybody. And I thought, yeah, I have to get my Zazen to the point where it just takes one period of Zazen to deal with this. You know, I didn't want to be lingering on my deathbed, thinking about all the things I wish I would have dealt with in life. And so I guess to sort of see Zazen as an opportunity to deal with the stuff that we're bound to have to deal with on our deathbed, before we are laying on our deathbed wishing we would have dealt with it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my response.
Thanks very much.
I'll add that is what stayed with me over your whole talk, that you wanted to do Zazen so you could figure out how to deal with death. And thank you very much for organizing, for everybody being here.
Thank you, Christine. And the other thing about that, you know, is that really every moment is death and every moment is life in this world of impermanence.
I'd like to say something. I just want to express gratitude as well. I was a child during the 70s, and I grew up basically in the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. I was Joan's daughter's best friend, and one thing, and I just have to say, Teijo, I saw you and I thought, it's Roberta! It's Roberta! It just brings me so much joy to see you. So as a child, the community that Katagiri Roshi created loved children and embraced them. And I was, Zen became part of the fabric of my life as a child because of those experiences. I remember doing mindfulness exercises and meditation for children at the Zen Center, and just feeling this sense of being loved and with the other children, you know. And Teijo embraced us as a special group. She took the children into her arms and worked with them. And I have vivid memories of those times. I don't have all that many vivid memories of childhood, but many are memories connected with the Zen Center. And I just want to express gratitude for you. I've thought about you many, many, many times over the years with such deep gratitude. For example, I remember, you know, taking my mat. We all had our mats, and lying down and putting my hands on my belly, and you would encourage us to breathe so that we could feel our bellies expand. And it was mindfulness of body and breath, and it just made such an impact on me, as did your kindness and your generosity. And now as an adult, I think, what would it be like to take all these unruly kids, you know, and to kind of work with them for long periods of time? And I realize all the more the kind of debt of gratitude that I owe you, and that I want to express. So so you've what you did with us enhanced and deepened our whole lives. And I would say exactly the same thing about Joan and Michael, that life would be a lot grayer. And I just want to express my very deep gratitude, and
and well wishes for you and for the entire community that you embrace and teach. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. I remember Katagiri Roshi at a wedding one time. He was crawling around on the floor after the wedding at the reception, chasing some of the kids. That's what I thought of when you started talking, Marie.
I had the sense that I was thinking that Michael and Joan are at some time they'll be gone, and what will happen. And today I know it will be okay. There'll be someone there. And I just realized it will be okay. Katagiri Roshi's still here, helping.
Thank you, Kelly. It will be okay.
Yeah.
I remember after Katagiri Roshi's death, several of us got together and I don't even know where we were, in somebody's living room. And everybody was talking about Katagiri Roshi in their own way. And I really felt like he was present in the room. And I'm feeling some of that today. Thank you so much, Michael and Joanne.
Thank you so much, Teijo.
And I'd just like to make one little clarification of the story you told about me, Teijo-san. I remember turning Katagiri Roshi with you at 2 a.m. when he died that night at 3 o'clock, I think it was. And I remember you kind of grimacing and commenting on how cold his feet were, because that was a sign that he was getting close to death. And the reason I was reluctant to sit with him at your request from 12 to 6 is that I felt I just couldn't do it. I was just too exhausted. And so I felt that I simply would fail. In other words, I just couldn't do it. And I knew it was very important that there be someone sitting with him who was not asleep and not kind of, And so that's why I was reluctant to do it. But then you kind of negotiated it. And so I said, I think I can do that. And so then I was able to be with Katagiri Roshi at the very end of his life. So thank you.
But you didn't fail. Gempo-san was the only person who was there at, well, Yasuhiko was sleeping on the floor in the room, right?
That's right.
His son Yasuhiko was sleeping.
Tomoe-san was sleeping on the floor.
She was in the next room.
She was in the next room. She was in his office, his study. Yeah.
Right.
But you were the only one that was there awake. And I so appreciate that.
That was such a great gift to me.
Oh, yes. Anything else? Joanne-san, do you want to say anything in closing?
I too feel Katagiri Roshi's presence here now, and I feel very emotional, and also very grateful that all of you are here and that we're all here together. Nothing to sneeze at. And the dog too.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here, and just call attention to great laughter and starting this session with Joanne-san talking about Katagiri Roshi's laughter. I think about Teijo's laughter, and I think about Marie's laughter down there when she started talking. That I know Teijo just over 20 years now. It fills me with so much joy. I really came to this practice and to sit because I was so afraid of being a parent. And Teijo's has been such a part of my children's lives, and so many children at Zen Center and Great Tree, having that laughter, having that crawling around on the floor, having that aspect of theater and playfulness. And it's very, very sweet to hear how long that's been going on, and how that was going on with Katagiri Roshi and Minnesota, and with you as a child, and with Joanne-san's best friend's daughter. That adds just such a wonderful surprise to all of this in terms of the carrying of everything forward. So I just want to say it's been very beautiful to see all that, and hopefully for everyone, that laughter continues to resonate for all of us.
One of the greatest joys of recent years for me was when I was at Minnesota Zen Center for the memorial service for Karen Van Auken. And a young woman came up to me and said, "I want you to meet my baby." And it was Anna Mae, Joanne's oldest daughter. And I was like, "Oh, you're on mute." But that was a delightful moment. Okay, should we wind this up? I'm getting zoomed out. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joanne-san and Gempo-san.
Thank you, Teijo-san, and thank you to everyone from Great Tree for your continuing practice and your presence. And thank you to everyone from Compassionate Ocean, and wonderful to see you here today.
Yes.
May the merit of this penetrate into each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together may realize the Buddha way.